Well, there are no more international breaks, but the African Champions League is upon us. We'll be previewing Matchday 1 of the group stages of the 2024-2025 edition of the CAF Champions League up next on this episode of the African Football Roundup on the African Five-A-Side podcast. Welcome to another episode of the African Football Roundup on the African Five-A-Side podcast. My name is Maher Mizahi. I'm your host. As always, or at least as has been the case for the last 2 years now, this podcast is brought to you by africasaCountry.com. This week we have a really thought-provoking piece on the website called "Why Are African Artifacts Everywhere But Africa?" And it made me think a lot, about all these very rare objects and artifacts that were taken from lands across the continent and never really returned. The author makes reference to the Rosetta Stone in Egypt, and the Benin bronzes in Nigeria, but everybody knows that there are probably every single country has maybe hundreds of artifacts that were taken, pillaged, and never really returned. So I think it was a very thought-provoking piece. I recommend you go read it. The link to the article will be in the description below. Also, last announcement, this week we will have a documentary coming out, or at least a short video, on the CAF Champions League final on the Africa as a Country YouTube channel. Again, you can find the link for their YouTube channel in the description below. Without further ado, let's get into the slate of matches that are going to be taking place Tuesday, November 26th. So for me, it's tomorrow as I'm recording this. And we'll start with Group A. Group A, we have TP Mazembe, MC Algiers, Young Africans, and El Hilal. The first match I want to talk about is TP Mazembe versus MC Algiers. MC Algiers, also known as Mouloudia, you'll hear me referring to them as that, and any Algerian will refer to them just as Mouloudia. They are the Algerian champions. Last year they won in very resounding, very dominant fashion. I've mentioned before that they have the biggest budget, or at least they have their company that owns them has the most amount of revenue and income on the African continent. So the richest company owns them, and therefore they're the richest club in Algeria. They have their own stadium. They have their own training complex. They hired the former Ivorian national team coach Patrice Baumel. So this is a team with a lot of means, and they're also the oldest club in Algeria, created in 1921. They have the most amount of fans in Algeria. And so this really is a serious club. It's a sleeping giant of sorts from our country that's coming back into the CAF Champions League. Still, they kind of feel like newcomers because they haven't really participated in this tournament in, I want to say, more than a decade now. That might be wrong, but it's definitely been a few years. And also last year when they won the league in such dominant fashion, they had Youssef Belaili. Youssef Belaili, if you follow African football or the interclub competitions, you know that this man is an absolute menace in the CAF Champions League, particularly with Esperance de Tunis. He won the 2019 AFCON with Algeria, and he was one of the main pieces there alongside Riyad Mahrez, who was playing on the other wing. Just a very talented, creative, just, in my opinion, one of the funnest players. I know that's not a word, but one of the funnest players I've ever had the privilege of watching. But he just isn't really professional with his mindset. He'll always miss training sessions, or he's been accused of partying. He was suspended for 2 years for a doping violation when they found cocaine in his bloodstream back in 2014, 2015, I believe. So Belaili is a player that, when he's focused, can probably win you a CAF Champions League, but do you want to take the risk? And Mouloudia, they took the risk and they invested in his salary, and he helped them win the league title for the first time in 15 years. But then he decided he wanted a different opportunity, and he decides to go to Esperance de Tunis, and that's where he is now. Maybe because they're going to play the Club World Cup. But Mouloudia have never really found a way to replace Belaili, in my opinion. Right now, they're about third in the Algerian league table. They just came off a pretty bad loss to CR Belouizdad. They lost 3-1 at home. Both clubs are from Algiers, but we can say at home because they'll always have the home field advantage in Algiers. And when you listen to the coach Patrice Baumel speak, or Emir Baumel as he's known in Algeria, he says that we're creating opportunities, but we're not being realistic. We're not that's how they say in French, but in English that means we're not being efficient in front of goal. So Mouloudia are creating chances, but they're not really putting them away, and that comes down to the attacking players they have. Belaili was putting those opportunities away, or was making sure his teammates put them away last year. This year they didn't really replace him. They brought in a striker, Andy Delors, and he missed a penalty in the previous match, and Indy Delort was one of probably the better French strikers in the league for the last 7 or 8 years before he moved to the Middle East. Now he's in Algeria. He scored some goals, but he hasn't really been able to replace Youssef Belaidi's influence. So, um, Mamelodi of Algiers, they need to be efficient, but I think you guys are going to be impressed by them this year. I think they're really they're gonna do well. However, in this first match, they're gonna be playing in Lubumbashi anyways. Lamine NGI, the coach, the Senegalese coach of TP Mazembe, who again took them to the uh, final of the Club World Cup, I think back in 2012. He says Mazembe has to protect home field advantage. He says this Group A is the group of death. Every single team is a big team. So Mazembe has to do what's necessary in Lubumbashi and win all their matches there. Um, the thing with Mazembe, excuse me while I take a sip of soda. All right, for those that don't know, Mazembe is not from the capital of Congo, right? They're not from Kinshasa. They're from Lubumbashi, which is in the Katanga province. The Katanga province is a province, I believe southeast DRC, has I think the most mining, there's mining all over DRC, but the most lucrative mining industry is in the Katanga province. And from what I understand, sometimes there are some breakaway tendencies from people in that province. And as a result, there can be a little bit of tension from the Katanga province and maybe the centralized government. And so the president of Mazembe, Moise Katumbi, who, by the way, was a candidate in the most recent DRC presidential elections, he claims that Mazembe hasn't received the backing and support of the Congolese government over the last few years. For example, other clubs will get government subsidies when it comes to financing trips. So, for example, if Mazembe has to go play in Algeria, the government will chip in, and Mazembe will benefit from that. The government's denying that they've been withholding these funds, but Katumbi has been pretty insistent about it for the last few years. Um, to exacerbate matters, Mazembe were also hit with a transfer ban. I remember reading that this summer, and so they lost a lot of players. Experienced players like Philippe Kinzumbi goes to Club Africain in Tunisia. Fili Traore, the Malian striker. My God, where did Fili Traore go? I want to say a Moroccan club, but I just completely blanked on it. And Joel Beya, the kid from Lubumbashi, the striker, another striker, he actually goes to FAR Rabat in Morocco. So they lost a lot of the players that were influential for them last season. And my question for them is, they weren't able to replace them. Can the young kids step up? We have a player like Oscar Cabuit, the young winger who was just recently called up with their senior national team. He's just 18 years old. Very stylistically, he reminds me of Vinicius a little bit. I think that's a crazy comparison. I'm never in a million years saying that he's gonna live up to those levels, but he's just sort of the way he runs, the way he dribbles the ball, as electric as he is. That's kind of who he reminds me of. They have Sheikh Fofana, the Malian winger slash striker as well, another very young player. So they have these young kids that were talented, but can they step up and replace the more established players that left? We also talked Kevin Mondeko, USM Algiers signed two TP Mazembe players, Kevin Mondeko and the captain, the center half, and also Glody Likonza, the roving midfielder. So can Mazembe replace those players? We'll see. But if Mazembe play anything like they did in last season's edition, they're going to create a lot of goal scoring opportunities, but they're also going to concede a lot of goal scoring opportunities. Now, what was paradoxical a little bit about that was last year, despite the fact that they were creating a lot and conceding a lot of opportunities, they weren't scoring that many goals and they weren't conceding that many goals. It seems like there was like some kind of superstition or like some kind of forces were keeping the ball out of the net. And the thing, so MC of Algiers, they say they've been creating chances, and what I can tell you from Mazembe is that they've lost a lot of established players, including in defense. I expect them to concede a lot of chances as well. Will MC of Algiers be able to actually be efficient and score some of those goals and get a result in Lubumbashi? That's something that we're going to keep an eye on. My prediction for this match is going to be a scoring draw. I think it's going to be a 1-1 or a 2-2. I think Mazembe is going to take the game to Mamelodi. They're going to be better than Mamelodi, but I think they're just going to concede too many goal scoring opportunities. And hopefully, for Mouloudia, one of their strikers is going to come around with a little bit of form and knock the goals in. So it could be either Bayazid or Delors or Zakaria Naiji or any one of those. So I say a 1-1 or a 2-2 for that match. The second match in Group A is going to be Young Africans versus Al Hilal. Young Africans made a coaching change very recently. They fired Miguel Gamondi, who won them the league last year with a record number of points, won them the Tanzanian Cup, and also got them to the quarterfinals of the CAF Champions League. And remember, in the quarterfinals of the CAF Champions League, they pushed Mamelodi Sundowns. I'm not saying they deserve to win, but they really pushed them. And they get rid of Miguel Gamondi because there's just so much pressure at these Tanzanian clubs. He has 8 wins, I believe, and 2 losses so far out of those 10 matches played. Of the 8 wins, just five of them were 1-0, 1-0, 1-0, 1-0. And I guess the people on the board at Young Africans felt like this team is not performing up to their standard, not like last year. And then the 2 matches that he lost were the most recent 2 matches. And so they felt like the team was on a downward slide, and they decided to put an end to Gamondi's time in Tanzania, maybe prematurely. The losses were to Azam, who we spoke about on his channel, and Tabora United. They bring in Sead Ramovic, German/Bosnian. I think he's born in Germany, but I think he has Bosnian, if I'm not mistaken, he has Bosnian heritage. Ramovic is, from what I remember, his time in TS Galaxy in the South African League, in the PSL, just a very strong character. I remember him clashing with Rulani Mokoena time and time again. Like, they almost felt like they were going to be at blows at times. And I remember as well him, after a match, grabbing the microphone and giving a message for the Palestinian cause, saying, what I see on TV is crazy. And again, that's like a political decision that you make that can have ramifications on your career. So for me, when I see those 2 things, I say, okay, this guy has a strong character. He's and I think you need that in a competition like this. And his side, CS Galaxy, I think they did a good job of, especially against the big sides in South Africa, of getting results. So I think this could be a good coaching hire, absolutely. And Young Africans for me is a really exciting team. I love, in particular, 2 of their attacking players. Stefan Aziz-Ki, for the Burkinabe number 10 creative midfielder, who last year I think won midfielder of the year. He might have been top goal scorer in the Tanzanian Premier League, if I'm not mistaken. Either him or maybe Faisal Saloom, I don't know. But he was just the MVP of the year last year. And they also have Pacom Zouzoua, who, in my opinion, was the most entertaining player in the CAF Champions League last year. He's an Ivorian winger that can just dribble anybody's socks off. And what he did to CR Belouizdad last year in the CAF Champions League was ridiculous. He's kind of like has this like very short haircut with bleached blonde hair, and just lightning in a bottle. They have like these very talented attacking players, but also a lot of calm, composed senior internationals. Players like Kennedy Musonda, who was absolutely crucial in helping Zambia qualify to the AFCON. Prince Dube in Zimbabwe is one of their best players as well. Cletus Shama from Zambia as well, another starter for the Zambian national team. Jigi Diarra, the starting goalkeeper for Mali. Mudathir Yahya, starter for Tanzania. Khalid Auchu, starter for Uganda. So these are all like players, with 27, 28, 29, 30 years old, have probably won more than 50 caps for their respective countries. Just calm, composed senior internationals. They're all grown men, feels like they all have, like, they're married and they have bills to pay, they're not going out, they're not partying. And so I really like the build of this Young Africans team. I think this could be the year where we finally get a Tanzanian side get back to the semifinals. Now, Al Hilal from Sudan, that's who they're playing against. The match is going to take place, by the way, in Tanzania. Al Hilal, they're first in the Mauritanian League. Remember, Sudanese clubs, the top 2, Al Hilal and Al Mariq, are not playing their football in Sudan because the league is interrupted. So they're playing in Mauritania. They petitioned CAF and FIFA. It was accepted, and they're playing in Mauritania. So Al Hilal is first in the Mauritanian League. Their coach is Florent Ibenge, again, somebody that everybody knows. He made it to 2 finals of the CAF Champions League in 2014 and 2018. He also won the CAF Champions League with Berkane, I think, in 2021. So Al Hilal is, they're a top club. They have, I just went through the roster of Young Africans, but we could do something similar with Al Hilal. The star Sudanese team that just made it back to the AFCON, Mohamed Abdurrahman, the dreadlocked striker, number 9, he's the captain of Al Hilal, Al Khorbal, they call him, Walidin Pogba Khidr, the tall midfielder for the Sudanese national team, also plays for Al Hilal. Mohamed Ereng, one of the starting center halves for the Sudanese national team, also plays for Al Hilal. Abu Ashrin, the goalkeeper that played, we kind of criticized actually playing for Al Hilal as well. Faris Abdullah is another veteran. So these, like a lot of the veteran players of the Sudanese national team, play for Al Hilal, but also players like Gissouma Fofana, a very experienced Mauritanian midfielder who can, battle in midfield. El Hajj Madike from Senegal. He's another international for Senegal. Is just a giant in midfield. So Al Hilal is a very good side with senior internationals all over the place. And me personally, I think young Africans have more talent on paper than they do. But Ibenge is probably a more experienced coach in these kinds of competitions than Ramovic is, who just arrived. So it's going to be a good match, very good match. The thing with El Hilal is they have 5 straight group stage exits, and that's not good enough for El Hilal and for Sudanese people. Now, to be fair to them, 4 out of those 5 years, they either had El Ahly or Sundowns in their group. So they were drawn in very tough groups. And in one of those years, they even had El Ahly and Sundowns in their group. So it was just like an impossible group to get out of. But still, they have to do better. And I think this is the year where they feel like this Group A is a group of death, but all teams are evenly matched. I'm wondering if Al Hilal can draw on that inspiration and that motivation that the Sudanese national team draws on to try and motivate them to try and get results in the CAF Champions League. So that's something to look out for. Still, the match is going to take place at Benjamin Mkapa in Tanzania. I think young Africans squeak by with a victory, a narrow victory, 1-0 or 2-1. Group B, Mamelodi Sundowns versus Maniema Union. Sundowns, from what I understand, just lost the Carling Knockout Cup final. Remember, they lost the MTN 8 final a month ago or maybe a few weeks ago. And apparently in this Carling Knockout Cup final, they just came across the Zimbabwean goalkeeper Chipezeze, who was just stoning them time and time again, despite the clear-cut chances. Sundowns currently sit at second in the PSL, in the South African League, behind Orlando Pirates, who I will be watching very closely this year. And the thing with Sundowns is that under Rulani Mokoena, who was there for the previous, several amount of years, Sundowns would control possession, but in some matches, like against Young Africans, who we just referenced, like against Esperance in the semifinals, they were perhaps a bit toothless. The possession was sterile in those big matches, and they needed to be more lethal, more dangerous, more direct. From what I understand under Coach Mkoba, sorry guys, I'm just gonna pronounce it that way. They're supposed to be more direct. That's what people have been telling me. I haven't watched enough of Sundowns to say if that's true or not. But what's for sure is that they have improved, at least in the attacking sector, signing players like Ikram Rainers, who's, I believe, my friend Valida just told me has 8 goals in all competitions. He's scoring goals also with Bafana, so that's good news for them. But what a shame, in my opinion, about Mshishi, Tembazwane. That was a player that throughout especially the first part of 2024, the first 6 months, I thought, man, this guy just getting better with age. And he ruptures his Achilles tendon in the most recent international break, or most recent one, I think. No, in October. And he's going to be out probably for at least a year. That's a very, very tough injury to get over. Still, Sundowns have more than enough quality to go all the way in this competition. I think everybody knows that. The question is, will they be able to with this coaching? We'll see. They're coming up against a side in Maniema Union. I think that's people don't really know them, including myself. Right now, they're currently sitting top in Group B of the Congolese League. The Congolese League is split into Group A and Group B, so they're top of Group B. Their coach is Papi Kimoto. He's a former DRC international. He played for DRC more than 50 times as a player. He coached only smaller clubs in DRC, so he's not a coach that coached huge clubs across Africa. But obviously, they're doing very well. They defeated Petro Atletico in the second round of qualifying, which is that's a very good job, because Petro Atletico, they were in the AFL. They were a team that was often making it out of the group stages. So props to Maniema Union for doing that. This year in the league, they're first, as I said, but it's not like they've just been beating small clubs. They beat Vita Club. They will be playing, however, in Stade de Martyrs in Kinshasa, not in Kindu, where they're from. They're from a city called Kindu. Or is that might be the province, actually. From what I understand, they have a few key players. So I looked through the squad, the Chan squad for DRC, to see which players play for Maniema Union. The center forward, Jefte Kitambala, who's former TP Mazembe striker, I actually do know him. He's going to be one to look out for. Also, the goalkeeper, Brunel Ifonge, he had 3 out of 4 clean sheets in the 2 rounds of qualifying this year. They also have a player named Ajay Basiala in midfield, who had a lot of assists in the previous rounds. So yeah, very much looking forward to learning more about Maniema Union. but I do believe that Sundowns are going to be the favorites here at home, taking on a side that's not familiar with the CAF Champions League. I predict a 2-0 Sundowns victory. The other match in Group B is Raja versus Asfar Rabat. Haven't watched enough of these sides recently to be fair. Watched a little bit of the Casablanca derby last weekend between Raja and Wydad. And Raja, by the way, there's a good preview of a lot of these matches, and particularly this one, on a website called CAF CL Gazette, CAF Champions League Gazette. So just Google that, and you can find a really cool blog on if you're interested in reading from another person who actually watches this channel, who we follow on Twitter. Does a very good job, and I'm gonna steal a little bit from his preview here. From what I understand, first of all, my first question is, will these Moroccan clubs cannibalize each other? Because when you have two teams from the same country in the same group, it's almost like a derby, and in that case, you tend to favor draws. Like, teams don't usually beat down on one another in that way, right? Raja do probably lack maybe more explosive players on the wings, and maybe a real striker, a better striker. They sold Mehdi Mahoub, one of their really talented young Moroccan strikers that I really like. I forget where he went to, somewhere in Eastern Europe. I want to say in Ukraine, but I'm not 100% sure there. And so they're maybe lacking a striker, maybe lacking, a pacey winger. They often line up in, like a pyramidal formation, maybe like a 4-3-2-1 or something like that. And the wingers tend to stay narrow. One of the wingers is Yousri Bouzok. He was the top scorer in the Moroccan Boutola last year. And they tend to have an over-reliance on him. He's an Algerian player that I've been watching for 10 years now. Very good dribbler in close spaces, takes penalties to perfection, good in the final third with his delivery, but he's still more of a facilitator than a goal scorer, despite the fact that he was top goal scorer in the Butola. And so they have players like Nafati, who's good on set pieces. I really like the fullbacks, Belouizdad. I like, Enes Niti is the goalkeeper, has a lot of experience. So I like Raja, but I don't think they're going to be winning matches by 2 or 3 goals this year. I think they're going to be winning 1-0, maybe 1-1s. I think this match is going to be tight as a result, because Asfar Rabat are, if I'm not mistaken, they tend to play with 5 at the back. I might be wrong about that, but I think that's what I saw from the team sheets. And like I said, it's a derby. I just don't know if they're going to be beating each other by much. So I'm going to say 1-1 or 0-0. Group C, we have Al Ahly versus Stade Abidjan. Let's start with Al Ahly. And with Al Ahly, we just keep waiting on their downfall time and time again, every single year, and it never arrives. But still, I think that this Al Ahly is not the Al Ahly of last year. I think overall there's less quality. Because when I look at the Al Ahly that won previous CAF Champions Leagues, I think of Percy Tau in his prime. I think of Mohamed Abdel Munem in his prime, Ali Ma'loul in his prime, Aliou Dieng in his prime. Have they replaced those players with players of the exact same quality in their primes? I think we can say Mohamed Abdel Munem has been replaced with Rami Rabia, who's been playing almost at the same level, very, very well. Atiyat Allah as a left back, almost at the same level as Ali Ma'loul, but maybe not exactly on the same level. But like a Percy Tau, I don't think they've replaced him really. So I don't know. Then again, you could say Wissam Abu Ali is probably one of their most prolific strikers in recent times. They didn't have as prolific a striker in previous CAF Champions League triumphs, when they were just playing with Kahraba as a makeshift 9, as a sort of false 9. I don't know. Something still says to me that this side is a little bit of an aging side, and they're not as good as they used to be. Are they still good enough to win? Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. So yeah, they're still going to be favorites here, playing in Cairo, and they're playing in Stade d'Abidjan. And the story here is actually very fascinating. Stade d'Abidjan's coach is 27 years old. His name is Alexander Lafitte. Excuse me. His name is Alexander Lafitte. He's a French coach. I think he came from the PSG Academy, coaching women's football for a little bit. He started coaching at the age of 18. And he gets hired in January of 2023 at the age of 25. And the club were in the relegation zone. And he helps them to a mid-table finish. And so within 6 months. And then he refurbishes the squad the next year in the summer. And they finish second behind the champions San Pedro, ahead of ASEC Mimosa, who were quarterfinalists of the CAF Champions League last year. And they pretty much kept the exact same squad, just added to some of the staff, the medical staff, the physio preps and everything. They have a really good midfielder named Ibrahim Banse, who played in Europe. He's Burkina Faso midfielder. And have the former ASEC captain in midfield as well, Aka Baudelaire. Their goalkeeper, Drissa Bamba, is also one of the starting goalkeepers for Cote d'Ivoire when it comes to the Chan side. And Jan Wilfred Zibber is also a defender who's also in that Chan side as well. So, look, they don't have like a stacked side, you know. It's probably don't have the quality of Azek Mimosa, but is this coach just a young genius? I don't know, and I'm really curious to read more and watch more of his sides play, because when you listen to the French media speak about him, they're really high on him. They say he's the youngest French coach coaching professional football in the world. So 27 years old, Alexander Lafitte. Really excited to watch him go up against Al Ahly, and he's like raring to go, you know, with this opportunity as well, because he says Al Ahly were just play, you know, they're gonna play in the Intercontinental Cup uh very soon. I think was it the beginning of December or something like that. They've been playing in the Club World Cup against, you know, Real Madrid and Manchester City, so he's just very excited to test, you know, his coaching acumen against a side like that. So very excited to see how Stade d'Abidjan do, a very proud historic club. um I still think Al Ahly, yeah, they should have too much for them at home. 3-1 Al Ahly is my prediction here. CR Belouizdad versus Orlando Pirates. CR Belouizdad had a slow start to the league season. They started, you know, drawing a lot of matches. At certain points, they were in the relegation zone. But this is a club that's qualified, I think, for the last four editions of the CAF Champions League, and they made it out of the group stages, I think, on three of those four occasions. But then they always kept getting eliminated in the quarterfinals. However, in the league this year, they've been doing a lot better in the last few matches. So they started the year with Corentin Martins, the former Mauritania coach, French coach, and they got rid of him after the slow start to the league season, and they brought in Abdelkader Amrani, who's an Algerian coach that always uses the spare wheel analogy, that, you know, big clubs always sort of call to sort of save a sinking ship, and he always does a great job, and he's really good in the Algerian Cup as well. He's won the Algerian Cup a good number of times. So he's done a good job of stabilizing the club, and they just got a big win against Mouloudia, as I mentioned at the beginning of this episode. But my problem with CRB is that it just seems like I don't know if they're completely stable yet, because I don't understand the strategy at the club. Like, they brought in a new coach and they brought in so many different signings, and they were just not coherent signings. Like, what's the vision? They lose Lionel Wamba, their young Cameroonian striker who did a great job over the last 2 years. He goes to the Emirati League for Al Wahda. They bring in Ayman Mahyous, the Algerian striker at the Chan. I think he was leading scorer at the Chan in the previous African Nations Championship. They bring him in from Switzerland on loan because he's playing in Switzerland. I think he scored 7 goals in 25 matches. Good player. Then they buy Kanyiso Mayo from PSL, who everybody on this channel from South Africa knows. Decent striker, you know. Scores, you know, double-digit goals in the PSL for the last three years or something. Good young striker, but similar profile. And then finally, they signed Islam Slimani, Algeria's leading top goal scorer for the national team, a player that used to play for CR Belouizdad before playing for Sporting Lisbon, Leicester City, Newcastle, Fenerbahce, Curitiba. He plays everywhere in the world, and now he's back. And he's at the club where the fans love him because he was here before he went to Europe. And so it's like, what's the vision there? Why would you invest in a striker like Mayo, or why would you even bring back Mahyous? If you're, do you need three strikers of that quality? Aren't players going to get frustrated that way? And so I see it just seems very uncoordinated, chaotic recruiting, and as a result, I think that's what explains the slow start to the season. So I think Amrani is going to have to do a really good job if he's going to have success of stabilizing the squad, and I think he's tend to do it very well. But they're up against a tough challenge in Orlando Pirates, and every time on this channel, Orlando Pirates fans are like, talk more about Pirates. You only talk about Sundowns. Talk more about Pirates, and I haven't really had the time to watch too much PSL, but I paid attention from a distance, and I can't wait to watch them in the CAF Champions League. Pirates are first in the PSL. They're undefeated. Um, they haven't really played top clubs in the PSL. They haven't played Sundowns or Chiefs or Stellenbosch or another big hitter. But I think what I like about them in this match is that the last match that they played was November 5th, and then there was the international break, and then there was the Carling Knockout Cup. So they were already eliminated. So they had 3 week break. I think that's going to give them a lot of time to prepare for this match. There's no excuse here for it to be unprepared when they travel to Algeria. So I haven't watched enough of Pirates, but when I look at their squad on paper, and especially those in attack, you know, Everest Mahopa, I criticize him with Bafana, but I don't, just because I don't think he's a striker that should start for Bafana doesn't mean I don't think he's a good player and that he can't do a good job for a club like Pirates. So I think he's, probably a very useful spearhead in attack. Then you have Mufokeng, who everybody's been telling me on his channel for the last years, one of the top talents in Africa on the left wing. And then I personally loved watching Patrick Maswanganyi. Let's just call him Tito. um, for Bafana in this most recent international break. One of the goals that he scored was absolutely sumptuous. I know like Dion Hoto, the Namibian sort of wing back on down the left flank. I know players like Gilberto, I think might be injured because I don't know, I haven't seen him play so much recently. The Angolan winger who was a star at the African Nations Championship and at the most recent AFCON, and Innocent Mayela. So I know a lot of these players, in Kota, but I haven't really watched them play together. So I'm very curious to see how Pirates are gonna look. And you know what? They've given me such I mean, people in South Africa are so high on them. They're playing in Algeria, so it's going to be tough. But Sierra Belouizdad doesn't have the home field advantage that Mouloudia of Algiers has or that CS Constantine has. And Sierra Belouizdad had a little bit of a hectic start to the season. You know what? I'm gonna be a little bit ambitious, and I'm gonna say that Pirates steal a victory in Algeria. I think they're gonna probably steal one nil or 2-1 because Belouizdad haven't been scoring a lot of goals. So I'm gonna say 2-1 to Pirates, and that's gonna put a lot of pressure on Sierra Belouizdad if that happens. That's my prediction. Finally, Group D, two matches, of course. Pyramids FC versus Sagrada Esperanca. This is not one that I can really get into too much depth with because I don't know anything about Sagrada Esperanca from Angola. They're going to be visiting Cairo. Me personally, I love the squad of Pyramids. Fiston Mayele, Ibrahim Adel, Sudig, Ugola from Nigeria, Blati Toure, Mohamed Lachine, the Egyptian international midfielder, Mohamed Chibi from Morocco, the fullback, Ali Gaber, Ahmed Shinawi, top players all around. I mean, nobody's disputing that Pyramids FC has top players. My problem with Pyramids is they don't have any fans. So what does that mean? I mean, in a competition like this, home field advantage and the atmosphere that you can generate at home is very important. If Pyramids can't generate that kind of atmosphere, are they going to have enough to go far in the deep stages of this tournament? I don't think so, but still, they should be able to win matches like this. Like I said, I don't know much about Sagrada Esperança. I just know two of their foreign players, Lomalisa Mutambala, left back from the DRC. I watched him play. I think he was at Vita Club. I watched him play a few different places. And Brian Mwila, the Zambian international as well. I think he scored a lot of goals for Zambia. I think maybe 10 goals in 20 matches or something like that. So looking forward to watching and learning more about Sagrada, just like I'm looking forward to watching more about Stade d'Abidjan and actually this next side, Djoliba from Mali against Esperance. But my prediction for Pyramids versus Sagrada is going to be, I think this is going to be the most resounding win of the first match of the group stages. I'm going to say 3-0 or 3-1 Pyramids against Sagrada Esperanza. Finally, the last match of match day 1 that we're going to be previewing, Esperance versus Djoliba. Coming into this year, I had huge expectations for Esperance as they maintained, the almost entire defensive line, the goalkeeper who was a star and who's, been nominated in the CAF Awards for one of the best young players on the African continent, one of the best goalkeepers on the African continent, Amanullah Memish. And they improved their wing positions. They brought back Youssef Beleli, who I mentioned, one of the best players in Africa. They brought in Elias Mokwana, one of the starters for Bafana throughout 2024 on the wing. They kept on to their Brazilians, Jan Sass and Ricardo Rodriguez. They brought in a very young Ivorian star attacking midfielder who plays like an attacking midfielder. I forget his name, but he's supposed to be really, really good, 18 or 19 years old. So what's not to like, right? They just lost maybe Ghailan Shalali in midfield. But for me, like this, they weren't that far off last year. They made it to the final and they just barely lost to Ahly. So I thought, this year Miguel Cardozo has time. They've recruited very well. This is their year. And they get off to just a horrible start in the league, just drawing match after match after match, losing some matches. Youssef Beledi's been okay. He has 7 goals, I think, in about 7 matches or something like that. Not just in the league, but in all competitions. But even he hasn't really hit, his level. Some of the fullbacks in particular have been horrible. Ben Hamida and Bushni, but even the goalkeeper, the young goalkeeper that we're also high on, Amanullah Memish, he's been having sitters. with the Tunisian national team, and he's probably going to be dropped now for Tunisia and for Esperance because they signed the number 2 goalkeeper in Tunisia, Bashir Ben Said, who's probably going to be number 1 now, as they give Amanullah Mamish, the youngster, a lot more time to mature. So I don't know. Again, that's a questionable recruitment. Do you buy the second best goalkeeper in Tunisia to put pressure on your young goalkeeper? I don't know if that's a good recruitment or a bad recruitment, but they're going to be without Yansas, Esperance de Tunis. So Miguel Cardozo got fired, and they brought in a Romanian coach named Rege Kampf or something. I don't know him very well. I think he was coaching in Saudi. He's coached all over the world, really. He's a globetrotter. I don't know if he's going to be any good or not, and it's too early to tell. But Esperance have been subpar. I was expecting them to be a lot better this far into the year. And they're going up against Djoliba. Djoliba are the first Malian team to make it to the group stages of this version of the CAF Champions League. They're the most popular club in Mali, created in 1960, very historic. And everybody has a lot of good to say about Demba Traore, their coach. He used to coach the under-17 and the under-20 Malian national team, so he's somebody that's very well respected in the country. Djoliba just won the Malian Super Cup last week against Stade Malien. So Stade Malien is supposed to be the whites of Bamako, and Djoliba is the reds of Bamako. That's what they call them. But Djoliba, again, on paper, everything looks good. You know, at one point last season, they had a run of 16 undefeated matches. The man that seems to be scoring important goals for them is Yusuf Simpara. He scored goals in the home and away leg in the second round of qualifying, and he also scored the goal in the Malian Super Cup, so somebody to watch. They also have a defender named Issa Traore that just signed with Bayer Leverkusen, although he won't make the move, obviously, until he's 18 years old. But if he gets to get some... If we can watch him play in the CAF Champions League at 16, 17 years old, I'd be very excited to do that. So he's not going to move to Leverkusen until 2026, but that's somebody that we can keep an eye on for sure. Especially for the Malian national team, because I think they have talented midfield and attack, but they're probably lacking a little bit in defense now. So yeah, my prediction for that match, again, if you asked me before the season, I would have said Esperance win comfortably. But I'm going to listen to the form here. And I'm going to say, you know, new coach for Esperance, struggling in the league. Logically, Djoliba are coming off a huge victory. The match is in Tunis. If you go by form, Djoliba should be able to nick a result, right? So I'm going to listen to my brain, and I'm going to say, you know what? This is going to be a 0-0 or a 1-1. And Djoliba are going to nick a draw over here. So yeah, that's the preview of Matchday 1 of the group stages. Let me know if I've made any mistakes. Let me know if you know anything about, especially Maniema Union or Stade d'Abidjan or Sagrada, Esperance or Djoliba. Let me know which matches you're going to be watching, who you think is going to be making an impression this year in the African Champions League. You guys really liked the most previous video when I ranked all 24 teams that qualified to the African Cup of Nations. Maybe we're going to do more rankings. I think people tend to like those kinds of videos. But yeah, really appreciate everybody watching. Really appreciate everybody sharing, subscribing, all the thumbs up, all the positive ratings on the audio platforms. This channel is really growing. I didn't think that it would grow this quickly and that there would be this much engagement, you know, because African football in English, it shows that, like, people are there. People are, you know, they want to watch it. People want to talk about it. And that makes me really, really happy. And I'm just happy that we found a platform maybe where we can all exchange ideas. I do try to respond to all the comments. So thank you for watching. Like I said, really warms the heart. And yeah, I'm going to make a video this week again, recapping the matches, and then next week we'll move on to another subject. So yeah, hope you enjoy the slate of matches. I know it's a midweek matches, Tuesday, people are working, people go to school, but still hope you enjoy the matches. And yeah, let me know what you think of these previews of Matchday 1 of the African Champions League. With all that said, I bid you adieu, and I'll speak to you guys in a few days. Take care. Peace.